Thank you, Kathy. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me here today. I have a couple of remarks prepared. Thank you, Ms. Reese, for being here. Thank you, Kathy Hansen, for putting on this event every year. And every time Mojave celebrates our veterans, our fallen, if Kathy Hansen doesn't do it, it doesn't get done. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give Kathy Hansen a round of applause. You're truly a woman of action, Kathy. I respect you, I salute you, and thank you for your contributions to Mojave. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to talk to you all today about why we come here to commemorate those who have fallen while serving our country. And the best way that I know to do that is to discuss what it was precisely that they were fighting for. In the Revolutionary War, it was pretty simple. We were fighting to put forth a new nation, so conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. In the Civil War, they were fighting for an equally noble pursuit, each in their own way, to preserve the idea of freedom, if not from slavery, the territorial integrity and sovereignty of their homeland. In World War I and World War II, they were fighting to rid the world of tyranny and firmly establish the notion that all men are entitled to the right to self-determination. In Korea and Vietnam, they were fighting to protect the world from a cynical and nihilistic ideology in communism. But I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my experience, and about what those who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, what we have fought for, and what some of us continue to fight for. I'm a civil affairs officer. I joined the Army in 2008 at the height of the war in Iraq. I was about 30 years old. I was exactly 30. There were approximately 30 soldiers per month dying in Iraq. The war in Afghanistan had been raging for about 7 years with no end in sight. I was drawn to the idea that I could go overseas and help somebody rebuild a country and support my countrymen in uniform at the same time. So I became an officer and a paratrooper in a civil affairs battalion in Washington, D.C. You see, civil affairs is the development diplomatic corps of the U.S. military. We're charged with engaging the population and helping them build the infrastructure and the institutions to stabilize a conflict zone. In 2012, my battalion was deployed to Afghanistan. We were all carved up, sent to different provincial reconstruction teams throughout Afghanistan. These PRTs, these provincial reconstruction teams, I was in the PRT in the province of Kandahar, where we were charged with mentoring the local Afghan government and engaging local villagers and tribal leaders to build schools and clinics and roads and factories throughout the province. We had equal parts military and civilian. We had Army Civil Affairs, Navy Seabees, State Department Foreign Service officers, Department of Agriculture, medical, educational. This was a joint interagency military unit, tip of the spear of U.S. counterinsurgency policy. Very rapidly for me, the war was not about stamping out extremism. It was about stabilizing a geopolitical ally in the war on terror and promoting American values abroad. Promoting American values abroad. As I mentioned, I had colleagues and friends in PRTs all over Afghanistan. And one of those PRTs was in a province called Zabul, just north of Kandahar. Toward the end of our deployment, on April 6th of 2013, just last year, Zabul PRT was delivering some books to a school just across the street. And while they were walking down the street to deliver these books, they were hit by a car bomb. 5 Americans died. 3 soldiers, 1 civilian, U.S. civilian interpreter, and 1 State Department Foreign Service officer named Ann Smedinghoff. They died delivering these books to a group of children that they'd never met before. This was devastating to us. It was devastating to the PRTs throughout the country. It was devastating to everybody in theater, all of which had lost friends and colleagues that day. We canceled our missions for the rest of the week to consider our own risks and reevaluate what our objectives were. The incident forced us to ask ourselves, what are we fighting for? We were not fighting for the homeland. I mean, Afghanistan was too far away. The insurgents no longer posed a real threat to America. We're not fighting to combat some evil ideology of the Cold War. Even if we kill all the insurgents, there's 1,000 standing up to take their place. What are we fighting for? What Ann Smedinghoff and those soldiers and that civilian died for that day is to make the world a better place, to give those Afghan children an opportunity for a better future, to export the single most powerful force this country has to offer. The idea that all men are created equal, that all men and women have the right to self-determination, that they shall not be shackled by the tyranny of poverty and disease, that the world is an optimistic place. We believe in this ideology, this idea. We believe in this so strongly, we're willing to die for it. You see, ladies and gentlemen, every day, America sends its men and women of the armed services and the foreign service into desolate, remote places around the world to promote American values overseas at great personal risk to themselves and their family. Most of the time, those values are eagerly embraced. And they are eagerly embraced, not because they're American values, because those values belong to the world. They're human values. They're human values. I am proud to live in and serve the kind of country that would send its men and women into harm's way to spread these human values around the world, because they're bigger than me. They're bigger than us. These are worth more than my life and yours and any individual. These human values represent the world, the future world that we want our children to grow up in, to make the world a better place. Those men and women that died in Zabul and every war that led up to this point, they expect something in return. They expect us to finish their work, to honor their sacrifice by making the world a better place. They don't want memorials, or tributes, or monuments. They want those Afghan children in Zabul to grow up with those books and become doctors and engineers and rebuild that country. To spread those human values, those American values around the world. They want to see the once imperial powers of Europe and Asia join together with the free world to promote freedom and democracy. They want to see the descendants of our own American Revolution deepen the institutions to make a more perfect democracy. Look at what these brave men and women are willing to sacrifice for children they have never met. The best way to honor those that gave the last full measure of devotion is to complete their work at home, make our communities more vibrant, more healthy, to give their children an even better opportunity for a brighter future. The best way to honor our servicemen and women and foreign service officers who have been slain overseas is to give them a better home to return to. Ladies and gentlemen, it's up to us. We need to take responsibility for our own communities, to make them more vibrant, to make them more healthy. We cannot wait for our neighbors, we cannot wait for our coworkers, our government, we cannot wait for somebody else to care more about our children than we do. We have to be willing to invest in our own communities, in our own children, in our own future, if we are truly to capitalize on the opportunities that others have sacrificed for us. If you want to honor a fallen comrade today, volunteer at your local school. If you want to commemorate those who died, organize an after-school program or a neighborhood watch. If you want to build a true memorial to those who we are here to honor today, mentor a child, or teach an adult how to read. You probably won't get hit with a car bomb along the way, I promise you that, at least not here in Mojave. The natural state of the world is tyranny. The natural state of the world is tyranny. Without constant vigilance, the values that our servicemen and women so gallantly sacrificed, they will erode. To honor our fallen, we must actively fight to protect these values, these human values, by investing in our communities, both here and abroad. And we do not need to wear a uniform to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. Airborne.